Yeah, we'll just start with the purpose of lighting. So, really basic. The reason why we use lights are for telling stories or for making people visible. So, like they said at our main session thing, the only reason why I can see the person on stage is because there's somebody running lights that has lights on them so we can see them. So, that's really obvious, but the other part is telling a story. So, and, it doesn't have to be like I have a bunch of colored lights and movers to be able to do cool stuff, but it's really about, if we have the lights available to us, being able to use those lights to communicate parts of the song, different stuff like that. So there's a couple different things with lighting. There's one, visibility. So the primary reason for lighting is to make people visible on stage so that way people can see them. The second reason is selective visibility, so it's to call attention to different parts of the stage. So just like with video, being able to frame shots so that way we can tell who's important. Just like, when we turn all the lights off on everybody else except for the worship leader. Okay, the worship leader is our point of focus. The next one is mood, color, those kind of things fall in that area. And the last thing is modeling. So it's to be able to help people stand off the background, stuff like that. So like backlight helps me right now to be able to stand off the background when I'm, especially with video and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, those are kind of the main things. Do those make sense? Really, really basic, but helps to understand those things. Okay, how many of you guys know what, let me jump back, sorry. I have so many things. So we're talking about telling a story. So we have, the main story is the gospel. And so, with the gospel, we have the beginning, middle, climax, and so there's this kind of the story flow. So kind of like in this picture, we have the creation fall, goes down. The pinnacle is the cross, and then we have the resolution and redemption and restoration. So lighting can kind of follow that. So like in songs, we have down parts, we have little light, big parts, we have lots of light to kind of accentuate the song and stuff like that. So that's kind of the lighting philosophy, especially it kind of goes with mood. But being able to interpret what the song is saying through lights to make that impact. And so with lighting, we're not trying to be something we're not by flash and trash. Flash and trash is when you strobe flash everything at 1,000,000 miles an hour, like if you were at a rave. That's not what we're going for. It's really to help I want to say ordinate, but that's not the right word. Well, anyways, we're not trying to make the gospel sweeter because the gospel is sweet enough. We're trying to make it pleasing in a different type of way. So we're not trying to, the gospel, and we're trying to this is the gospel. It's exciting. It's awesome. So accentuate, yeah. What James calls it is gospel flow. So they do this when they pick songs. They pick God is good, big, the how great is our God type song. And then they do the we're sinners type songs, tend to be more like introspective, sometimes down because, now I'm broken in my sin. And then we have the cross. So that's the third step in the gospel flow, which is how they pick songs here. So the cross, Jesus paid it all, very triumphant, like Jesus has conquered sin and death. And then the songs of being sent out, like go and tell the gospel. And so even within that gospel flow, the way that they pick songs here kind of follows that theme. So being able to, with lights, be able to communicate that. So that's a general gist of that. So, and they try to pick songs that way every week. So the gospel flow, and then also being able to tie songs back into the message is another way that they pick songs. So if you didn't know that. Okay, now we're going to get down to more of the technical, what is light? So how many of you guys are familiar with how light is made up? Like if you could think back to your physics classes, you understand that light is a wavelength. And so white light is made up of all the different colors, like the rainbow is a breakout. If you take the prism, breaks out the different colors, or Roy G. Biv, those types of things. So like all those different light, or those different colors are wrapped up in what we call white light if we combine them. So understanding that white light has different colors and that kind of stuff, you can then start to understand different types of light fixtures. So like we have tungsten, or like your regular household lamp. We have fluorescent, which is awesome. So if you're a lighting person, fluorescence is like the bane of your existence because it's just gnarly if you really look at it. There's HID, which is like the gym lights. So it's like those, turn them on, it takes like 3 minutes to get fully bright. So those are called HID, or high intensity discharge lights. There's also ceramic metal halide, which is a different type of light fixture. Like if you look at our auditorium, they're also called arc source lights. They're the 500s, the 250s, the movers are those. There's also LED, which is really familiar now. So all those different light sources actually have different color properties within them. So like if you take an incandescent, if you take a LED and a arc source light and you all put them to warm white, they're actually going to have different color properties to them. So like if you look at this chart, all of that encompasses white light. So, but when you break it down and actually look at it's called the color spectrum, you start to see where different light fixtures kind of line up. So if you look at this chart, we see sunlight, and this is kind of the general curve of sunlight. It's very full, very somewhat even light. So like if you were to take, if you were to go outside, look at your t-shirt and that kind of stuff, everything looks full, looks good. But when you start to have other type of light sources, that's where these things tend to break down. If you look at the LED, this is just a generic LED. It tends to have a little bit of a spike in blue. So like if you have like a white LED light, it tends to potentially have more of a blue cast to it. Incandescent, you can kind of see it kind of doesn't have as much blue. It kind of ramps up into that red area. And if you've ever played with like light fixtures and put like colored gels in front of them, you really start to notice this. And I think I'm going to do this for my 201 classes, actually looking at reasons why like this, understanding these things really apply to being able to pick gels, pick colors, that kind of things. Especially in this incandescent, like if you put a red gel in front of the light, it does a really good job at creating red light. If you put a blue gel in front of it, it does a terrible job because it doesn't have that blue color in it to be able to pass that wavelength through it. Because what gels do is it absorbs all of the other colors and only lets that color through. And so if it doesn't have much of that wavelength inside of that light, it's not going to be able to project that color. And this is where like CFLs, that CFL is fluorescent. You can see that it has a green spike in there. And if you've been around fluorescence enough, you can see that it kind of has a green cast to it. This tends to be like the brightest area in the color spectrum, but it also can kind of, like I've heard like in classrooms, this can be like a bad color because it's more straining on your eyes to have that much green and that kind of thing. But it also has a blue spike and that red spike. So like if you were to try to like black light. You've never seen a black light out of an incandescent, but sometimes with like a fluorescent tube, you can get a black light. The only reason why is because of this. You see that spike in that ultraviolet region. That's how you're able to get that ultraviolet black light look, is because it has that color inside of it. So this is the color spectrum for our 500s, T50s, that arc source lamp, which is at was it 5,000? No, 7,000 kelvins, which is bluer. Yeah, they're the movers. They're the ones that are backlighting. Those are LEDs. Yeah, all we have in it here are LEDs and incandescents, but like, yep. So they're the ones on the floor up by the curtain. Those are the 500s. The 250s are the ones on the truss that are above the screen. Those are both have the same light fixture in them. So if you look at this, you can kind of see how this color spectrum would affect any kind of like gobo, or not gobo, but like color filter that's inside of it, because its color filter is directly affected by its color spectrum. I know this is really technical, but like I wish I had, well, in the next class I'll kind of show you like why, it's important to know this stuff. Because if you're trying to get a certain color, you can only get it with sometimes certain fixtures. So like if you want a really saturated blue, you're not going to get that with an incandescent. You're going to have to use like an LED or the ceramic metal halide, the arc source. So and we can talk about this more too if you have any questions, but like understanding that an incandescent isn't going to do blue, so putting a blue gel in it isn't going to do very well. But having an LED with a blue light in it is going to get that blue that you want. And same with like understanding that the reason why we don't use like movers or like LEDs for front light for the most part is because it doesn't do as well with the color on their face and that kind of stuff, because it can tend to look more blue, tend to look more green. So that's why we use like these types of fixtures. We can see them, they're really bright. But all these fixtures out here, these ones that are on, are incandescent halogen. They're really similar. Yep, these ones, the one that's shining at me right now is incandescent halogen. The blue ones are all LEDs. So, color temperature. How many of you guys familiar with color temperature? Understand kind of what that is? So there's, warm white for the most part, cool white, and then there's kind of the one in between. If you go to Lowe's, there's like 3 different ones. There's daylight, cool white, that kind of stuff. So that's color temperature. And so for the most part here, we tend to do like a warm white, so that 3,000 Kelvin temperature, which is what these are. These are warm white light fixtures. They tend to, help the reds in people's faces to come out, so that way people don't look as white or pasty, that kind of thing. Like if you use cool white on their face, it can tend to make people look more pale, that kind of thing, because you're not emitting that color from the light. That way it's not bouncing off them. So you guys so here's a fun, not practice, experiment or whatever. If you take a red light, like an actual red light fixture, and you shine it on red paint, it glows, because the red light is emitting that wavelength bouncing off the color, which has that same color wavelength or whatever. You're able to get it to kind of glow or look really red, look really saturated. But if you were to take a blue light and shine it at the red paint, it turns like black, because it's not bouncing off. So it's this whole idea of you have to have the color in the light in order for it to reflect off of objects. So like for Were you guys here for our Good Friday service thing at all? So maybe it was 2 years ago. We actually used like red paint on the signs with the red light, and it actually was able to get it to really pop because that red light shining on the red paint helps to make it really saturated, really pop. Do you guys remember even like the red glasses, like that you get in cereal boxes maybe? And you look at like something, it's like to decode it. It's the same idea. Like you can only, those wavelengths are specific. So if you have a red wavelength bouncing off a red letter, then you can see it. Okay, so that's color temperature. Okay, so this is color mixing. So in our light fixtures, there's two different ways to color mix. You can either do additive, which is like if you were to use paints. If you mix red with green, you get red and green. What do you get? Okay, easier one. Red and purple. Red and blue. I'll give you the answer. You get purple. Yellow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And green and blue make cyan. So CMY, cyan, magenta, yellow, or red, green, blue. Yeah, that's true. It's right in front of us the whole time. So that's additive. So it's combining different colors in order to get a color or to create a color. So like these LED fixtures, they have a red, a blue, and a green. So the color that it's actually putting out right now is cyan. So it's actually mixing blue with a little bit of green. So when you understand, like, especially with LED fixtures, like we have your color mixing. So you're adding colors together in order to create a color. Or if it's blue, it's just that LED. So like with our LED fixtures, it has a blue light, a green light, and a red light. Sometimes an amber. We'll leave that out just to keep it less complicated. So if you add like a blue and a green together, you get a yellow. So you can mix those colors and to create a color. If you mix all three of them, that's where you get white light. So like you see like in the additive circle there, that's how you can kind of mix those colors to get white. Subtractive is a different animal, and that's what I'm pretty sure that's what our movers, like the 500s, the 250s, that's how they mix. So like if you add all the colors together, it actually makes black. It cuts the light out because it's actually mixing it differently. So what additive does is it uses a dichroic glass, which is a really fancy term for meaning colored glass, and it only lets the wavelengths through that it doesn't have. So basically, if you're shining a white light at it and you want cyan, it's bouncing off all the other colors and only letting cyan through. So gels absorb, dichroic glass reflects. So I hope to buy one of those someday because it's really fun to look at, because like when you shine a light through it, you can kind of see on one side it's one color, on the other side it's the other colors. So because it only lets that one through. So like on our 500s and 250s, if you mix all the colors of the rainbow in there, it's not going to get any light output. So does that make sense? So that's color mixing. So that's how our light fixtures do color. And luckily, for the most part, we have our board set up where you select a fixture, you select a color, and it's usually good to go. But if you ever have an instance where there's no light coming out of the 500s or 250s, it's probably either because it's closed or you have too many colors in there. So now we're going to jump into fixture types. So how familiar are you guys with our light? Is this like brand new stuff for you guys? Yeah, awesome. So There's a lot of stuff. This is really base level stuff. But really when you get to working with the board, it's really easy because a lot of times you don't need to know some of this stuff, but it's good to have an idea of what this stuff is. So there's two different types of fixtures. There's a wash or a profile fixture. As the name implies, like wash, general wash, it kind of just vomits all over whatever in front of it. A profile fixture is something that you can have control over. So like with these fixtures here, they have shutters, so you can actually like close in and really aim into what you want to have light on, versus like these are wash fixtures, all of these back here, because it's just you kind of point it at it, whatever spills, whatever happens. And then we have, so that's kind of a type, and then we have a secondary, I don't know if you call it a type as well, but we have conventionals, which are like these out here, which just have a halogen incandescent fixture in it. You know, it's like a light that you have in your lamp at home. And then you have intelligent, which are like the movers, that kind of stuff that you can actually control different parameters to it. So conventional uses a dimmer, just like your light switch at home. The intelligent, or everything's kind of done within the fixture. So like these LED fixtures, everything's done inside. So the computer tells it what to do, but then it has the ability to change color, brightness, strobe, those kind of things. So with the wash fixture, there's a par and a Fresnel, a scoop and a border type strip. So these are just different fixtures. So like this type of fixture up here is called a par. It's you can kind of look at it. It looks kind of like an old light fixture on a car. It has that kind of same properties to it. You can kind of see the different patterns on it. That's how it kind of does the light. If it has this smaller pattern, I think it's opposite. But like if you kind of see that texture in there, that's what shapes the light. If it's wide, you can get a wide flood light lens, or a narrow. So a par or a Fresnel, is kind of like if you look at TV studios type thing, it's like those big lights that have like the circular shape in front of it. And we have some of those in our auditorium. It has a knob on it that you're able to actually make the pool of light smaller or bigger. This par actually has a oval shaped light, like on the floor. If you were to look, it kind of has an oval. A Fresnel is more circular. So a Fresnel tends to have, I think ETC calls it a Parnell, but tends to be a more even kind of light wash. So those are kind of the real basic ones there. We have profile fixtures, which is like our ellipsoidals. These are what we use for front light because you can actually shutter them, shape them. You can take them in and out of focus, make them sharp. You can put gobos in them. So that's what we use for front light. And we use wash stuff for like backlight, on stage type stuff. But always for front light, if we can get away with it, we use ellipsoidals, which you'll have to look at them when your light's not shining on you. But so that's the ellipsoidal. So does that make sense? Any questions with those types of things? Anything you don't understand? There's no dumb questions. I know that I'm kind of blazing through really monotonous stuff, but.
So the main back when I was here, you had the ellipsoidals, you had two different sets. You had a more, is that just different bulbs?
Those are actually different gels, and we've kind of gone away from that since to just having just one color and straight on. So anything else? Anything I need to clarify? Make sense? You're like my guinea pigs right now. So like, this is a lot of information. So, but I think once you kind of get up and around it, and I know Jacob and Cody, they know all this stuff, or Cody does at least. Jacob's pretty familiar, but he kind of oversees all salt stuff. So he kind of gets his feet wet where he can. but Cody's a smart guy. So next we're going to talk about angles. So like when you're setting front light and how to like light somebody. So if you were to look at how I'm lit right now, how many angles would you say that there are? Like of lights shining on me? 3? Yeah, that's 2, 3. Yep. So if you look up here, you can see that there's 4 lights on me. This is kind of our standard message wash type of thing. So for message, like in our auditorium, you'll see that there's just kind of a general wash. And the way that we do this is just by putting lights way out there as far as we can at a low angle, so that way you don't have the dark spots around your eyes. And the way that we have it in here are these 4 lights, but it's kind of like, it's called 2-point lighting. You have kind of 1/2 angles where it's kind of straight on. There's one called 3-point lighting where it's like a 45. So there's a light over here, and there's a light over there. And the 3rd point is those guys. So the reason why you use the different things of light is to get to solve different issues. So the nice thing about this is that they're all kind of together, they're all straight out. So that way when I walk this way, it's really even because the distance between me and the lights isn't growing or decreasing. So if I were to go this way, it gets brighter. If I go this way, it gets darker. But when I am pacing back and forth, like during the message, you'll see Jeff Dodge or whatever on stage. He's not getting brighter and darker, or that's the hope. So that's kind of a 2-point lighting. It's just having the kind of that 1 point or 1 angle from the front to shine on them. So that way you can kind of defeat that brightness issue. Because if you even have like a 3-point lighting, if you have one over there and one over there, if I'm coming this way, this one's getting brighter, this one's getting darker. But if I go this way, this one's getting brighter and this one's getting darker. So that's kind of the pitfalls of either one. The downside to single point lighting is if you're doing like multiple cameras, is if you have a camera over there, I might look a little bit darker on this side of my face. And you'll kind of notice that. And one thing I've been trying to think through like for our weekend is the message lighting in there. If I kind of bring the lights around him more. So instead of being kind of straight on, bring it around so that way it kind of lights up more of the sides of his face, because it can get a little bit dark having just one up here and one back here. The nice thing about like a single point light is it's pretty easy to keep it even wash. So like even in there, all 4 lights are pointed at the same area. So that way you don't have 3 points or 3 lights pointed at one spot and one over here. Because when you add lights together, it gets brighter. So just like math. I don't know. Just like math. 1 + 1 = 2. So, and you see this even in the audio world, and I don't know if Nate would agree with me, but like if you take 2 of the same sources and you add them together, it inevitably gets louder, right? Yeah. So same with lights. If you add more lights, it gets brighter, for good or for bad. So one way to get, like in a lot of the theater stuff, you tend to use 3-point lighting and not necessarily 2. You tend to have a fill light, which is kind of like your main light. I should know this. The second light that's shining from this other 45 that's kind of filling in this area, but not quite as bright. A key and fill. Key is your main light. Fill, thanks Cody, totally blanking. Fill light that's kind of filling it in, and then a backlight. So that, like if you look at anything on TV, you'll kind of see that, that kind of represented. And even you kind of see backlight on them. This is kind of how it's kind of lighting up the hair, making me stand off the background. You'll see that a lot of like movies and TV and that kind of stuff. You'd be like, where's that light coming from? Well, they're in a studio, so they can do that. So I'll quick finish the angles. I'll be done here in a sec with the computer part anyway. So Straight on shot, the nice thing about that is it shows symmetry in people that are beautiful. So like if they have very symmetrical face, if their face looks good, a single light up front will kind of help to show that symmetry. Now, if they don't look very pretty, sometimes getting more edgy with different angles of light can tend them to make them more interesting to look at. Like I listened to this lighting designer that worked for big names in country music. He'd done lighting for events for Obama and stuff like that, and he was sharing about how he was helping this rock star that had obvious broken nose and stuff like that looked pretty rough, and so he would use like a bunch of different harsh angles to make him look interesting, because if you were to like put one light at him, it would show just how ugly he really was. So to cover that up, he used multiple angles of light in order to overcome that. So that's the nice thing about single point lighting. 2-point lighting, you can tend to wash more of the face, so like get both sides. So like if you have a really wide auditorium or something like that, maybe 2-point lighting is good. If you're in a really long hotel, you could probably get by with one light. So like even in Minneapolis, when we did that, we only put 2 lights in there that just straight out from a long ways away. And it works okay because it's able to light them up, and it could capture well on video and that kind of thing. So, but backlight is important, especially for video. Not so much if you're just doing live stuff, but like if you're capturing video, it really helps the subject to stand off the background and keep them from kind of dissolving into the abyss. I still remember a picture like from one of the first times at Cottage Grove where whoever was speaking, and it was just like black, and like the hair just kind of blended into the blackness of the background. And so it's like, where's his head at? So
Later, I can show you examples of see if I've got some really good examples of that.
yeah. So back to the mood thing. So like, and all this stuff is going to be available to you guys too, like the video, which is not going to be awesome, but hopefully helpful. But then also like all my paper here thing of all this stuff. So like, and up at our light board, we have this up there too, to kind of like how to pick colors for different songs. So like, red, very passionate. Jesus paid it all. Blood, very symbolic. These aren't hard and fast rules, but like general, like how-tos, like how to pick colors. We have, warm white is a very comforting, soothing, like it feels like you're sitting at home around a campfire with the lights, on dim. It's very cozy. Cooler white is near that clean purity. It's also kind of more energetic. Blue, is that calm, serene. So like if you, oceans, exactly. And some of this stuff is pretty like stereotypical, but it's, oceans, it makes sense to have blue because it's kind of a calmer song. You wouldn't go wide open with red or anything like that because it doesn't make sense. Purple is royal. It's a little bit more upbeat than a blue, but it's still kind of that calm, very peaceful type stuff. Green, money, growth, life. And yellow, exciting energy. I'll tell you that I never use yellow or green just because it can tend to overtake whatever's on stage. So like green in particular, this is something I found out, like if you put green on somebody's face, it can tend to make them look evil. If you ever look at like scary movies, they put like a green cast on them. Like the witch from The Wizard of Oz has that kind of greenness to them. And yellow on black people, I guess, tends to make that same effect. I don't know why, but that's just what I've learned. Those are like the real basics anyway, is like how to pick those things. Even like picking colors. So like the way I pick colors is I pick one main color. Usually you always have white as like front light, back light, that kind of thing. But then like actual color to like background, like blue or whatever. And sometimes, not very often, sometimes I'll pick a third color that complements it. And I have a document that I can share with how to pick the different complementary colors because there's some colors that clash. Like we all know that. Tie-dye is not cool. But yeah.
Okay, this may not capture well on video. Can you kind of describe the lighting of this room? Why it was chosen, what's there, or I know you described some of the stuff like on you right now, but so you have to
Yeah.
control the room.
Yeah, so there's general house light, so just kind of general wash out here. As you can look, it's even somewhat spotty. So I know at some point we talked about even adjusting lights in here for LEDs. Have you guys been in the gym at all? We put up some LED lights in there that are really cool and create a really nice look. It's really even. And then the fun thing is you can change colors, so you could like make it blue in here. That's really fun. So then we have it's called front light for obvious reasons. That's the light shining on people's faces. So we picked the ellipsoidals, and there's a general rule of like how bright it should be. I don't know what that actual measurement is, but like if you're standing on stage and it looks good, it probably is. You don't want it to be too bright because then it can be like overpowering. But you also don't want it too dark because then you can't really see. You're like struggling to see them. So front light, that's what all this is out here, is just washing on people's faces for the most part. Back here, backlight, so is the next thing. So like when they're preaching at 180 to escape, making sure that they have good backlight. And then everything else beyond that is just kind of a design preference. So Cody was kind of the one that set the stuff up in here for the colored lights and the truss, all that kind of stuff. But that can be just whatever you want it to be. You can have some or not. You can get by with it. But the basics are front light, back light, house light. They're kind of the most general, most normal ones to have. And then you could have color if you want to, but good question. Does that make sense? Does that answer that? Anything else? How about you guys? Iowa City, what are you guys doing? Getting ready for a building? Yeah.
Whatever.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And there's a lot of like fudge room as far as like how to do it. But the main thing is just doing as well with what you have. And so I don't even know what Iowa City has for lights, but or what they were sent out with. But yeah, just making sure that the people on stage are visible. That's the main thing. If they're not visible, then it's kind of a total loss. But yeah. It's even like in Minneapolis, I was there at their kickoff, and they have like 120-foot long hotel room. And we put the lights 80 foot back from the stage, and they were bright enough. So what I told them to do anyways, bring the lights more forward. They were on one tree together, split them out, put them on the sides of the room at an angle to hopefully get some more interesting angles on the people speaking, just because sometimes a single light can look kind of flat. There's not a differentiation between the sides of the face and stuff like that. But so hopefully, I don't know if they're doing it or not, but I sent them with the little brother of what you guys have. You guys have the 190? Yeah. I sent them with the 160s. Yeah. So, yeah, and that's the right term, too. Some people call it fog. That's not right. But haze, it's a mineral-based liquid that's run through a machine that then disseminates that into the auditorium and everywhere else that it bleeds into. We have it really low, but it helps to be able to see the colors of the lights, the beams from the light fixtures and stuff like that. But yeah, we do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so fundamentally I start with front light, back light, and house light. Make sure those are all good. So like if those are solid, that's a win as far as I go. And then it's just the ornamenting, if that's a word, with color and creating the mood. So yeah, I start front light, back light, house light, and then jump into, okay, what's the song? Because like the house light, front light, and back light, especially front light and back light, will stay the same throughout multiple songs. The house light may change between like message and songs, but the colors would be the ones that'll change. So like for a song that like a more like out the gate first song of the day, it tends to be more upbeat, that kind of thing, more high energy. So I pick a more high energy color. So like a cyan, even a warm white or something like that that kind of evokes that kind of mood, whatever feels good. Because it is pretty subjective as far as like what color you think looks good or whatnot, but there is a general, like that color chart is very helpful. And then, the service tends to like dive down into like a slower, more introspective song. So I'll go more like a cooler color, a blue or purple or something like that, that kind of creates that more like intimate and soothing, calming feeling that whatever. Yeah, then just follow the song. So as a lighting designer, like knowing the songs well is very important. So that way is this color first off going to be good match for this song or not? But then two, you can kind of know if the song starts quiet or calm and then ramps up into a bridge, maybe staying with that blue color for that bridge isn't going to translate very well. So like either brightening up everything or changing the color to a more energetic color, like a cool white that kind of, wow, make sure your pupils dilate or contract. It's like, oh, that's exciting. So, but yeah, just fill out the song. We've kind of cut back in recent years with like how much we do as far as like lighting changes during songs. At most, or for the regular aspect, we usually change colors for different songs. Occasionally, we'll ramp up into a bridge by changing color or intensity. But we don't do that intensity or change for every song, but only if it feels right. So, and with lighting in general, what I've found is that it's kind of a practice of minimalism. What can I take away in order to, what can I take away and like still make this great? And kind of compare it to like the Mona Lisa. Like if I were to add one more brush stroke, it would potentially ruin a beautiful painting. Same with lighting, if I add this other color or if I move this other light, is that going to be beneficial and helpful, or is it going to be ultimately be distracting? So that's kind of how I approach lighting is a practice of minimalism. Like what can I take away in order to create the best thing? And so sometimes it is all lights on full, on stun at warm white to kind of create that bang punch in the song. But sometimes it is just that single light, single backlight on that person, and that's it. And being able to create those dynamic changes is good too. So that way it's not all lights on full all the time, but being able to create those different atmospheres and changes helps it to make it more interesting too. So